Sarupam Rupam tasyagrajamurupurim maturim goshtavatim Radha kundam girivaram Ahuradhikamadhavasam Prapto yasya pratitta kripaya Shri Gurum tam natasmi Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindubhyaiva cha Patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha Nikhila Shruti Mole Ratnamala Diti Nirajita Pada Pankajanta Aji Muktakola Irupasyamanam Paritashtam Harinam Samshrayami He Ludunita Kedaya Vishadaya Pranmila Ramodaya Samyak Shastra Vibhadaya Rasadaya Chitarapitum Madaya Saswat Bhakti Vinodaya Samadaya Madhurya Maryadaya Sri Chaitanya Nidhi Daya Tavadaya Bhuyad Mandodaya Vande Sri Krishna Chaitanya Nityananda Sahadito Godadaya Pushpavanta Chitra Sangrutamonudo Ladini Shakti Sarupaya Gauranga Suhridaya Bhakta Shakti Pradhanaya Gadadhara Namostute He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Vrindavanishvarita Vaiva Padara Vindam Primamritaikamakarundara Soga Purnam Hridyarpitam Madhupate Smarathapamogram Nirbhapayat Paramasitalamashayami Bhaktya Bihinaya Parat Lakshay Shipta Shakamaditarangamadhye Kripa Maitam Sharanam Prapanam Brinde Namaste Charanarvindam Brinde Namaste Charanarvindam Shri Sacinandana Gaur Hari Ki Jai Harinam Prabhu Ki Jai Shri Govardhan Puja Ki Jai Giriraj Maharaj Ki Jai Shri Haridas Varja Giriraj Govardhan Ki Jai Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Gaur Premanand Hari Hari Bo Pranam to all of you. Dandavad from Sri Mayapur Dham, and wishing you all a blessed celebration of Sri Govardhan Puja, a blessed celebration of the month of Kartik, and a blessed celebration of today's meeting, which in itself is worthy of being celebrated as usual. Having the opportunity to reunite with like-minded spirits is not small feat. It's not an ordinary occurrence, right? Just to remind ourselves to do a favor to ourselves and to show affection to ourselves by reminding ourselves that we shouldn't take for granted satsang, spaces where we can hopefully feel free to be ourselves, feel free to be honest, feel free to be present in our everything and anything. That's a great gift that we are all being blessed with. So that's worthy of celebration. So very happy to be with you in this holy assembly, sacred circle, and with the added layer of today's celebration of Sri Govardhan Puja, at least here it's today. I assume in every single country you are now, it's today as well. So may you be having a very beautiful absorption in this particular unique lila of Bhagavan. We have been talking today in the morning here. We had a gathering with the local brothers and sisters who came. Maybe some of you were connected or have watched that, but continuing with the series we are giving here on rediscovering our relationship with Krishna, we talked about Govardhan Lila in that context. Every single Lila, of course, is a multifaceted jewel, and it can be approached from so many different angles. So today we chose that and try to extract some of the teachings it gives us in terms of rediscovering Krishna, being able and willing and open to recognize. Now that's a very interesting word, recognize. Because sometimes recognizing is just like a normal word. I'm recognizing, but recognize, no, to know, to cognize, knowing something, no, get into being willing to meet a new person, to give God permission to be a new person, to give God permission to evolve. No, not only we have to give ourselves permission. I mean, it's not that he needs our permission to evolve. Krishna is an ever-evolving personality, but in order for him to evolve in us, in relationship to us, there has to be a mutual agreement in the contract, so to say. So anyhow, we share some thoughts. Today's meeting doesn't necessarily need to be absolutely centered on Govardhan Puja, though, of course, if you have questions, comments, or whatever you may like to share in the context of Govardhan Puja is more than welcome. But if you have some other important pressing issue you may like to bring to the table, that's equally sacred, equally welcome, equally appreciated. So I'm seeing a few hands raised, and as usual, for those who are just connecting, if you have anything you would like to share, you just raise your digital hand. I'm seeing 3 hands now. Balaram Prabhu, welcome, first time in our Istagosti. Always connected, but now from Vrindavan, you can do it. Antardarshan Prabhu, yes, Jai. Greetings to both over there. Okay, so let's begin, and let's see where Sangam from Austria. Please, you can unmute yourself.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. I have a question according to the class you gave in the morning. You kind of said there that entering the lila is not a goal which we should reach so in the end of our life, but we should long to practice that right away or at the moment. And I'm interested if I understood it correctly, that you said we should reclaim where we are right now, and from that state we should relate to Krishna in a loving way and to start serving him and maybe then enter to the lila. Or how do you meant that? Because it also appeared in my mind. I have a friend, she is practicing Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti, where they are reading the pastimes, which in like at 12 Krishna is doing that, at 1 he's doing that, and they meditate on that, and this is their entrance to the lila. So my question is, how do we start there, or how did you actually meant that to start in the moment to connect with the lila?
Yeah, thank you for the question. What I mentioned today was somehow a brief mention. I didn't fully unpack the idea as I did. I remember in one lecture we gave, I remember 2 years ago when we had the series on radical personalism. Before the book came out, there was a series of lectures, you may recall them, where there were like 25, 26 lectures given in, I think between the end of 2022 and beginning 2023. So the last lecture, my point with all this is that the very last lecture of that series, and that's where I'm, just to give some further reference, if you would like to explore in further detail later. I will say something today, of course, but that lecture may help. So it's the very last one of the Radical Personalism series. And then I'm talking about how to participate in lila in the here and now, basically. And today we also started from that point. So my point was that when we speak about lila, of course, lila means sometimes it's translated as pastime, though it's not a term that I particularly use, because sometimes pastime, I don't know, doesn't tell too much for me. So sometimes in certain words at certain time tell something to us, and at another time we may feel the need to use some other term. So lila actually means play. So divine play, celebratory movement. No, play means like a carefree action, basically, no, where you are not acting out of obligation, but out of celebration. You are not acting out of necessity, but out of joy. You are not acting for pleasure, but out of pleasure. It's not just one word that I'm changing in the definition. It's a very important difference. What's lila? No. So when we speak about lila, we are referring to how Krishna and his devotees interact. Now, you don't have a lila without devotees, and we don't have a lila without Krishna in one way. And so lila basically refers to the loving interaction in love, loving interaction between God and his lovers, basically, which is ruled by other laws. Again, it's not law of karma, if you will, but the law of celebration, the law of lila. So it's important. I mean, we can say so much more about just lila. We can just spend the rest of the lecture about that, but that's not the purpose today. So when we hear about lila, Krishna lila, Rasa lila, Govardhan lila, this lila, that lila, ultimately we are hearing about the interaction, the loving interaction between God and his devotees. And of course, in our tradition, and not only in our tradition, but in all other Vaishnava sampradayas, the notion is that in one sense, technically speaking, everything is lila. For example, this whole material creation is considered in our tradition, Jiva Goswami uses the term Shristi Lila. So the lila of creation, the divine play of creation, implying this whole material cosmos unfolds from the world of lila, from the world of play, from the world of love. Due to God's own experience of fullness and love, that kind of explodes into this cosmic manifestation. That's in the Vedanta Sutra and in many other parts, Lokabhata Lila, Kaivalyam, and many lines. So somehow the blueprint and the backdrop of the material creation is God's own heart exploding. Sorry if I'm becoming a little poetic, but I have to. There's no other option. Says Chaitanya Charitamrita. When we start to talk about the highest mellows of love, we have to employ poetry. There's no other way around it. We have to become poets, ultimately, to be able to navigate those waters. So lila is the loving interaction between God and his devotees, those actions that come out of fullness, out of celebration, out of love. That's not exclusive to Vrindavan, to something happening in some other planet. That can happen everywhere and anywhere, providing we are aligned with this understanding and aligned with this experience. I'm saying all this because, again, many times we say lila, and as I mentioned today in the morning, we make of lila a faraway reality, far distant in geographical, so to say, space, and far distant in time also. That's something that will happen in the future and is somewhere else going on. And I get the point, but my point is, if you just limit lila to that, whenever you hear about lila, you relate to the lila in that way. You won't relate in one sense to the lila. You will just listen to it as a story that is going on somewhere else at some other moment, in some other point, and you have nothing to do with that, and it has nothing to do with you in the present circumstance you're in. So you are not bonding with the lila. You are not creating some link, some connection in which you start to relate to the lila, in which the lila is relatable to where you are on some level. I'm not saying just imitationism, whatever, sahajism. Just try to force yourself. Yeah, I'm in the lila or whatever, but somehow the lila has to speak to you wherever you are. Doesn't mean that we're dragging down the lila to wherever we are, and that's the only meaning of lila. No, lila has multifaceted meanings, but among those, it's the generosity and the capacity of the lila to speak to us where we are now. That's what I've tried to do today in the morning in the Govardhan Puja, presentation, which is, okay, we have Govardhan Puja, we can talk about it in such high way that doesn't relate probably to where we are now. But also we can draw so many lessons from Govardhan Lila, which really apply to where we are now, which really speak to us here and now, which really make Govardhan Lila relatable to my life. And somehow I can feel that, oh, that speaks to me, that's about me somehow, my situation, I can relate to that. So I feel some bond with the narrative. I feel some that I'm part of that somehow, or that starts to be part of me. It speaks to me. So I start to feel that I am participating. You cannot participate in something unless you feel part of that. A part of that, not apart from that, right? As I mentioned today. So many times we create lots of apartheid, as it happened in South Africa. We do apartheid in connection to the lila, in connection to God, in connection to so many things, where we push all that stuff as a distant, far away future situation or people or entities. And we make lila, Krishna, and love absolutely unrelatable to where we are now. So we create like this disjoining situation where we are here and now in this particular situation, and God, Krishna, lila, all that stuff has nothing to do with where we are. So it's two parallel universe. And probably with that particular framework, you are not attaining lila. You are not advancing toward that, because we will enter lila officially, we will be fully participating there as depending on how much we are already doing that here and now. No, it's not that, as I say today, it's not that we live our life feeling this has nothing to do with me, and it's just like a charming story that we commit to memory, that we can recite once in a year for the celebration day. We know what to say, how the story unfolds, we know it by heart. Yeah, but as we say today, it's not so much listening to Krishna's lila, it's not so much about learning what Krishna did. He did that, then he did this, then he went there, then he said that. Listening to the lila has more to do with the whys than what the what. Not so much what Krishna did, but why. Why he did that? What was the intention behind every one of the actions and the movements in the lila? Was the inner motivation that drew God to do this, the devotee to do that? When we enter into the intricacies of the whys, of the motivational, intentional layer of the lila, oh, then we can get attached to the lila. We can start to bond and to relate to it on some level, at least. Because if not, it's just a charming story that we may know by memory, by heart, but it holds no practical application in my day-to-day life. So I don't see myself as a member of that. And of course, there are some traditions, as you mentioned, some lineages or some groups, which you mentioned that they practice Raganuga Bhakti. I may like to clarify that we are also supposed to be practicing Raganuga Bhakti. That's a whole other conversation, but Raganuga Bhakti doesn't mean just one thing, right? Or just on a daily basis, I recall in my memory the whole sequence of the Astakaliya Lila in Vrindavan. That can be Raganuga Bhakti, or it cannot be. It all depends from which place you're doing. I remember once hearing from Anantadas Babaji, who was one of the main exposers of Raganuga Bhakti, and he will say, even if you're on a daily basis you have committed to memory all the Astakaliya Lila, the eightfold pastimes of Krishna, you know all the sequence, all the details, but you are just going through that in a mechanical way. That's Vaidhi Bhakti, he said. Right? That's Vaidhi Bhakti. That's just some mechanical thing you are doing, like because it's supposed to be done. That's the way to do it from that place. So it's a lot about intention and motivation. So I will argue that Raganuga Bhakti, again, we are all in a Raganuga Bhakti Sampradaya, because Raganuga Bhakti is the path to Braj, to Vrindavan, and that's the goal officially stated in the Gaudiya Sampradaya from day one. So from day one, at least in principle, you are part of the Raganuga Bhakti Sampradaya. How much you are fully immersed in what that means and the implications of that, that's a different thing. And that's why Jiva Goswami has spoke about Ajata Ruchi Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti in his Bhakti Sandarbha, which means you are practicing Raganuga Bhakti, but Ruchi has not arisen yet. So you are following the path of passionate love, but there's not that much passion yet. Something like that. But somehow you have accepted in principle the ideals of the school. They are on the journey already. You are connected with ideally more powerful people who are embedded in that spirit. So it's a matter of time that if you are, of course, sincere and apply yourself, that you also will enter into that passionate current. But it doesn't mean that you are not practicing Raganuga Bhakti, that you are not belonging to that particular line, because again, Prema Rasa Nirayasa Korite Ashradan, Raga Marga Bhakti Loki Korite Pracharan. That's Chaitanya Charitamrita saying. Mahaprabhu came to Prema Rasa Nirayasa Korite Ashradan, to relish the ultimate essence of Prema Rasa and Raga Marga Bhakti Loki Korite Pracharan. He came to do prachar of Raga Marga Bhakti, of the path of Raga Bhakti in this world. So there's no way around it, basically. Of course, at the same time, the dispensation of Mahaprabhu is very broad, and other personalities with other affinities even are accommodated there, but that's, so to say, the specialty of the Gaudiya Sampradaya. So I wouldn't say, again, only those who on a daily basis recount the lilas of Krishna are practicing Raganuga Bhakti. So for us, again, for us, a very user-friendly of not only practicing Raganuga Bhakti, but again, it's starting to relate and bond with the lila, is to go through all these lilas in a way that we can derive lessons and teachings that are utterly relatable to where we are. So we feel, okay, the lila is speaking to me. This is relatable. I don't want to make the whole lila just with me in the center, but we need to find some this is relevant for me on some level, because if I speak just, it goes above my head or on the right or the left, how much we are really entering there. So once we find the lila relatable, we can discover, like we talked today, in the Govardhan Lila, the Sharanagati of the Brajavasis, the nature of their faith, their willingness to acknowledge the storm happening and going through the storm and going toward proper shelter, at the same time not attached to which shape the shelter will take, and so on and so forth. Many lessons that we can identify with and say, yes, this is talking to me. This is absolutely relevant. I'm part of this. I'm part of this narrative. I'm part of this story. This is my story. You start to own, so to say, the story, own your place in the lila gradually. That's the beginning carving of your seat in the lila, not the seat that you will be sitting. There won't be time for sitting. So it's a very practical way of beginning to feel this sense of participation or bonding and connection. And gradually that will take to the newer, different, deeper layers where eventually, ultimately, one becomes a, so to say, an official, active, crucial member of the divine play eternally. So that's basically what I've tried to say today. And I think it's important. I say it's important because we hear so much about lila and so much emphasis and about, and it's all about lila. But again, what's lila? Let's not keep lila being a concept, no? A term that I memorize how to define it, and that's how I know what's lila. But lila, we need not only a conceptual framework to know how to define lila, but also we need an experiential framework to have an experience of what that is. As I say today also, Krishna can be a concept in our life. Is Krishna a concept for you, or is Krishna a real person that you are relating with? Or is he a theological idea only? It can be. God can be just a concept above the clouds, or it can be a very daily, real experience. So the same with lila. We should how to say? We should make an effort to, of course, to acquire proper conceptions of everything. I'm not against concepts, but the concept has to take you to a certain practice that will take you to a certain experience. Now that's Sambandha Videya Prayojan. No? If you want, you can translate it as that. Sambandha Videya Prayojan. No concept practice experience or concept application of the concept and fruit of that application. So it all begins with proper conception, but it doesn't end in a concept only. So we can also become drowned in concepts, and everything becomes, we have a concept, but the idea is that whatever concept we have, that has to become a person, so to say. Radical personalism. So the concept has to blossom into personhood. The concept has to become a person. If not, Krishna remains a concept. He doesn't become a person. He doesn't become the supreme personality that he is. No. He can become the supreme concept. But we need Krishna, we need the divine to become the supreme personality. We need everything else to become its supreme personality, not just a concept. If not, we reduce everything to concepts. God, this world, lila, us, everything is just an idea, an abstraction, a concept. So how to keep everything, how to make a conscious effort to walk from concept to experience, from concept to person. No, that's Christian consciousness, basically. Anyhow, a few thoughts. What do you think, Maya Prasanga? It's okay? Satisfied? Something else?
It's okay. It's really beautifully presented.
Thank you for the question. So, and giving me the chance of sharing some further summary of what we shared today in the morning to keep with the Govardhan Puja momentum. Let's go to the next raise hand. We have Rasangi. We have two Rasangis today. So Rasangi from the US. Happy to also know that Rasangi from the UK was able to join us. So greetings over there to Prem Vilas and the family. So going back to the US, Rasangi, please unmute yourself.
Pranams Maharaj, and I never knew there was any other Rasangi.
Oh yeah, there are so many. You know this lila of Brahma, right? Brahma going to Krishna, knocking on the door, and they say, "Who are you?" "Ah, it's Brahma." "Which Brahma?" "What do you mean, which Brahma?" "Brahma, the four-headed famous one." And Brahma then sees Brahmas with 8 heads, 16 heads, 3 million heads, and okay, I was not the only one. So
I mean, I thought,
watch out, Rasangi. Watch out. There are four-headed Rasangis over there, so don't get scared whenever you meet them. That's why Rasangi from the UK is not turning on the camera, because she's manifesting the multi manifestation. I'm joking.
I always thought, what a strange name. I've never heard of any other Rasangi. What is that? Anyway.
That's a beautiful name. Beautiful name.
Prabhupada gave it. Shamarani said it was a name for Radhika in some way.
Yeah.
Prabhupada said part and parcel of transcendental pleasure. That's what I heard the meaning was for my name. But so Maharaj, I'm thank you for your disclaimer this morning. Come as you are, feel safe.
Which one? Oh, okay.
Come as you are, feel safe. That's
as
like
you say this morning, but this morning for you is not this morning for me. So I went to my morning and I say, which disclaimer did I share? Yeah, thank you.
A welcome, such a broad-based welcome, which is so appreciated. So I was focusing on, I don't know if this was part of your lecture or just what you wrote, but I love this, that when the Vrajvasis run to Krishna for shelter in the midst of the storm, they don't cling to a preconceived notion of what that shelter might look like. They place pure faith in him. In our own lives, Sharanagati asks us to release our expectations of how surrender should appear. When we try to dictate the form that divine shelter should take, we limit Krishna's loving response. True surrender means opening ourselves to whatever form that shelter takes, even if it appears as an enormous mountain-like umbrella. So I wanted to relate that to something in the book, Spiritual Bypassing. Do you mind?
As long as the quote that you will read is not too long, it's okay.
No, it's short, and it's a concept that I'm taking from it. So
okay.
And you know, you're not the only one to have mentioned this book, but I've taken it seriously. One of the chaplain from ISKCON has mentioned the importance of this concept of spiritual bypassing. And with you, I've taken it another step, and I'm studying it myself, understanding its importance in my spiritual life and my life all around. So what this is talking about is, and what you say, integrating our experiences, the different sides of us, the different unhealed parts, integrating them into ourselves. But so for many of us, we've been bypassing those things for so long, bypassing so many of our wounds and hurts and feelings, real feelings, for decades. And what he's talking about here is becoming embodied. That means like bringing it to a place where we identify it, but we don't identify with it. We can have it be there, but it doesn't control us, right?
Mm-hmm.
So getting more embodied, and not just physically, means making deeper and deeper contact with what we are feeling. And this is sometimes far from pleasant. It's easier to float near it, to disassociate from it, and to make such distancing, such emotional disconnection into spiritual virtue. By fleeing or marginalizing our more painful emotional states is of no more use than is exploiting the feel-good possibilities of our embodiment, as when we lose ourselves in eroticism. But it's not easy, Maharaj, to kind of uncover what has been buried so deep for such a long time. It's like unearthing. It's like scary. It's very challenging, I must say. And I know I'm not alone in this. I've talked to other friends on the path with us, and so I really appreciate what you said today, that there is shelter. Krishna's there, he's not gone, but we don't always recognize the form that it takes, that we're going to find shelter, that we're going to find support, and that port in the night that we can take guidance from. And it gets very, very unearthing. I'm just saying, very kind of, and I know you went through it for over a year, that unearthing, that, oh no, where to go now? Or what is this? Such strong feelings. So just bringing that out, being in the field I am, I understand that, but I haven't really experienced it until now so much. The level of awakening, maybe it is, or insanity. Sometimes it feels like insanity. But coming alive to what really is going on, not denying it and repressing it or pushing it away. So maybe you could talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I cannot, of course, a few things come. Yeah. First of all, something that came today while talking with Trivikram Prabhu, his friend, brother from New Zealand, who therefore will generally never connect because of the awkwardness of the time zone, whether their awkwardness or our awkwardness for them. But he sent me a very interesting quote from some unknown author. I'll share it with you because it's quite relevant to the notion of that triggered. He sent the quote and asked me what did I think about it. So some interesting things came. So a simple quote, it says, "Whoever tries to help a butterfly come out of its cocoon kills it. Whoever attempts to help a bud emerge from the seed destroys it. Whomever tries to awaken consciousness in someone who is not ready confuses him. There are certain things that cannot be helped. They must happen from the inside out." So So somehow I related that to a spiritual bypassing, no? To the desire of trying to make things quicker than they should be, no? Like not honoring the process, not honoring the chapters, the landscape of the journey. Let's put it that way. You go on a journey, but you are not honoring the landscapes you need to go through the journey. And you say, no, I don't want to go up and down, and just want to go straight. There's no journey then. Then you are creating your own fictional world, no? So spiritual bypassing, among many ways, of course, we can define it, for me has to do with the unwillingness to go through whatever I need to go through to reach to my goal. And again, we know that the goal is unceasing and ever evolving, but you get my point. So an unwillingness, the sahaja, we have the word sahaja in our tradition. No? Sahaja basically means, of course, it can be interpreted in many ways, but sahaja means someone, in this case, how it's generally used, it can mean many things. In its negative application, sahaja means someone who wants things easy. And easy in this case means who wants to bypass. The very word bypass means you are like skipping chapters. It's like reading a book, no? Imagine if you read a book and you jump, and I know some people does that. I never did that, but I know people does that. They jump straight to the end of the book, to the last part. And I mean, you can get some idea of what they say in the last page, but if you haven't gone through the whole book, that last page will be very different than if you just jump directly to it. You say, oh yeah, I know how the book ends, what the book is about by the last page. No, you don't. That's Sahajism, literary Sahajism. Sorry to be publicly chastising a few of those. I can see by your faces who are the ones doing that. So, but we have the term sahaja in our tradition. Of course, sometimes it's expressed ultimately to someone who imitates the lila of Radha and Krishna and does like degenerate things, but also it can mean someone who is impatient in the journey, who is not patient. And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he will say, patience is a symptom that I trust in Krishna, basically, that I'm, that I'm respecting the unfolding of reality. No. Patient means I'm honoring how reality needs to unfold for the best of my journey. No. Impatience being the opposite. No, I want things to conclude quickly or suddenly get to certain results. I don't want to go through the whole journey, basically. But the point is that in Bhakti, the journey is the destination. I mean, we don't have a destination in the sense that you reach a certain point that there's no more journey. That's not our tradition. Our tradition is ongoing journey forever. Even if you reach Prem Bhakti, even if you attain Golok Vrindavan, the journey goes on a daily basis. Everyone is tripping. It's a trip. Everyone is tripping on Prem on a daily basis. So it's a constant journey towards a higher level of fulfillment, a higher level of celebration, a higher level of harmony, truth, and beauty, and has no end because there's no limit to how much all these realities can overfill. So my point is, if in our tradition we will say we are not so much concerned for a destination, but the journey is the destination, because bhakti comes from bhakti and bhakti takes to further bhakti, and it has no end how much bhakti there can be there. Bhaktya sanjatya bhaktya. So if the whole journey is a destination, then I have to make peace with the journey. I have to be okay with being constantly on a journey. And that begins where I am here now again. No? So if I'm trying to skip chapters of the journey, and if I'm in a rush and I'm impatient because I want to reach as soon as possible the goal, quote unquote, then it means that I'm not understanding what the whole thing is about, actually. Because if I'm too much in a rush to reach a so-called final goal, then I didn't understand what Bhakti is about. There's no final goal. The goal is always 2 steps ahead. There's always some further love to attain, some further depth of dedication to attain. So I must be okay with being on a journey perpetually. with all the nuances of the journey. Of course, one thing is the ongoing journey in the lila with divine love, and one thing is the journey we may have to go as human sadhakas with the brokenness and embarrassing chapters that we need to go through. But that's in itself also glorious and part of the journey. So it may help to remind ourselves in those embarrassing moments or difficult landscapes, this is part of the journey. This is all included, integrated in the glory of the Bhakti yatra or the Bhakti pilgrimage. I'm a pilgrim on this journey, right? As we talked sometimes in the past, we are not tourists on a journey. You can go on a journey as a tourist. You can go on a journey as a pilgrim. So ours is a pilgrimage ideally. Now, even when it looks like a horror movie, still that's part of the pilgrimage. No, it's always good to zoom out and bring the bigger picture to mind and remember, okay, this horror movie is happening in the context of a pilgrimage, of a holy sacred journey. So in that way, we can, counteract this tendency for sahajism or for spiritual bypassing. And today, talking with Trivikram Prabhu, who sent me this quote that I shared with you before, also this idea came very naturally to the point that I felt how I never saw that. No, the things that sometimes happen, right? Like it was right in front of my face for so long. I never saw it that way. It had to happen today. So we were talking about spiritual bypassing and spiritual bypassing. And of course, we could say, okay, the Bhagavatam is not talking about spiritual bypassing. It's not using that exact terminology, but it's using the terminology that most resembles spiritual bypassing that is available in Sanskrit for that time. And that terminology comes in the second verse of the Bhagavatam, right at the beginning. It's a line that I generally quote, which is Dharma Prajita Kaitavo. Dharma Prajita Kaitavo Atra, says the Bhagavatam. This famous verse is second verse of the Bhagavatam, or even you can say the first verse, since the other verse is more like an invocation, Nam Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Janmadhyasya and so on. Sometimes that's considered as an invocation. So you can say the next verse is the first verse. Dharma Prajita Kaitavo Atra Paramonin Matsaranam Satam. But just stay there. Dharma Prajita Kaitavo Atra. This verse has three atras. Atra means here. In this book, in this treatise, Bhagavatam say, Dharma Prajita Kaitava. We utterly reject all cheating in the name of religion. Kaitav Dharma. Another way to refer to Kaitav Dharma, cheating in the name of religion, spiritual bypassing. It dawned on me today. It was like, of course. How could I never saw that? So that's the beginning of the Bhagavatam. That's the first verse. It's saying, in this book, we utterly reject spiritual bypassing. We utterly reject cheating in the name of Dharma, cheating in the name of religion, spiritual bypassing, spiritual Dharma, religion, bypassing, cheating. So in a contemporary language, just you translate that line like that. So that's the initial statement of the Bhagavatam, like implying, you want to read this book? Okay, first do this. Now, first know that here, this is not included, spiritual bypassing. If you have that, probably you shouldn't go to the next verse, so to say. I mean, I don't want to traumatize any of you and just stay in verse 1, but try to get the point, no? If we, as much as we indulge in spiritual bypassing, we may be missing what the whole Bhagavatam is about, basically. Because from verse 1, it's cautioning us, this is not about spiritual bypassing. So you should not be about spiritual bypassing. If you want to be about what the Bhagavatam is about, okay, the book is not about spiritual bypassing, I shouldn't be as well. As much as I can be aware of that. Of course, there are so many layers to spiritual bypassing. No, that's in itself part of the tricky thing with that. No, the more we enter on the journey of work and purification and going deeper and deeper, like I was talking to a friend the other day, a Babaji friend I went to visit, and he was telling me, it's like there is this system for he did some research of the best ways to purify water. And he will say, when they try to purify water in the first chunk, so to say, water was purified 70%. They went to the second round, water was purified like 15%. Then they went to the second one, water was purified 3%. And in that way, the finer that they tried to do, the more difficult was to get the full picture of purification, because you have to go in a more subtle way. You have to detect and find things that are not so easy to catch and purify. So the more we go deep into spiritual bypassing, the more difficult the more deep we go into detecting spiritual bypassing, the more difficult that becomes, because it's so subtle. But we have to do it, because if not, we kind of institutionalize spiritual bypassing, basically. And one of the final triumphs of spiritual bypassing and the greatest tragedies is that spiritual bypassing becomes the norm and is seen as spiritual practice. So all the things that are established as how to be a devotee, all of them are spiritual bypassing. But they are blessed by the institution or whatever, so nobody sees them as spiritual bypassing. It's just what I'm supposed to say, to think, to do. It can happen, potentially. No wonder the Bhagavatam gives that warning, verse 1. No, do not do spiritual bypassing. It's not about that, like implying there is something called spiritual bypassing. Watch out. There's something called kaitav dharma. That's the expression, kaitav dharma. Cheating religion, cheating in the name of religion. And I was thinking also about Bhaktivinoda Thakur. He will describe different types of asatsanga. Asatsanga, we know what that is. It's the opposite of satsanga, the opposite of what we are doing here. So he will say the worst type of asatsanga, and each of us may think, yes, the Mayavadis or the atheists, the modern scientists, and this and that, and we have to put all of them in prison and exile them into an island, or who knows. No. Women, they are the worst type of asatsanga, right? Some people think like that. Sannyasis are the worst type of asatsanga. That may be more accurate in some cases. Anyhow, you have all these versions. Bhaktivinoda Thakur said the worst type of asatsanga is the dharma dwaji. Dharma dwaji, what does it mean? It's connected to what we are talking about. It's basically saying the spiritual bypasser. Let's translate. Dwaji, in Sanskrit, dwaja means flag. No, dwaja. And dwaji means he who carries a flag. So dharma dwaja means he who carries the flag, the flag of dharma. But it's just carrying the flag. He's not being dharmic. He's not actually practicing, living, walking the talk. It's just carrying the flag and trying to make his flag carrying a replacement for actual living the ideal. So he's cheating others by showing, hey, look how much how dharmic I am, no? Moving the flag so everyone can see I'm dharmic. But actually you are not. So he says that's the worst type of a satsanga, which means externally you can look like a dharmic person, like a Vaishnava, like a devotee, but you're just spiritual bypassee, right? Because other so-called forms of a satsanga, at least they're overtly clear that they are a satsanga. Dharma dwaji is disguising as something else. Again, kaitav dharma. It's cheating others and cheating yourself. So that's spiritual bypassing again. Maybe they didn't use that word, but it's there from time immemorial, just for us to know this part of human conditioning. That's not a new thing. No, that's part of the anartha nivriti we need to go through. So that said, I don't want to end on a hopeless note. I just wanted to unpack a little bit how this is present in the tradition and how we are being warned about that. I'm not saying it's easy. Again, it's a journey. Again, it's acknowledging the journey. It's glorious in itself if we can see all those chapters in the context of the bigger journey. And I cannot avoid remembering what Henry Nouwen say about God's unconditional love, that he will say, that's the only certainty we have. No, Krishna's mercy and Krishna's grace is the only certainty. Everything else potentially uncertain, including the landscapes you will have to visit in your journey. Lots of uncertainty, lots of ups and downs, lots of messiness, lots of brokenness, lots of stuff. But all that is happening in the bigger picture, which is the bigger certainty, which is Krishna loves you. Krishna has already accepted you fully, infinitely. You already belong. And you're already threading the path of bhakti, which is glorious. And no matter how embarrassing may be your present chapter, how difficult, that's happening in the context of bhakti. Don't ever forget that. If you are sincere enough, that's happening in the context of bhakti. So even the most embarrassing thing happening in the context of bhakti is glorious. We have to get that equation. Even the worst embarrassing thing, which happens very often in the context of bhakti, is glorious. So when we understand that, we can allow ourselves to acknowledge the embarrassing things. Because if not, we become ashamed of those chapters and we enter into denial. And still those are there, but we are in denial. So that's spiritual bypassing. No? We are in denial for whatever reason, because we think, oh, by acknowledging that, Krishna won't love me. By acknowledging that, it means I'm outside of the path of bhakti. By realizing my messiness, other people, what they will think. I mean, that has nothing to do with how bhakti operates. Real bhakti, real satsanga, which is bhakti, I mean, emphasizes other types of values, emphasizes what we're trying to emphasize here, hopefully. The journey is glorious. You are already accepted and loved. All this messiness is part of the glory of bhakti. It's not the goal, but it's part of the landscape. So learn to accept yourself in the journey. Learn to accept the landscapes that you have to go through. Understand the bigger picture of how those horror movies, dark tunnels, fiery dragons, whatever you may like to use the terminology, all of that is necessary. It's part of the journey. No, nothing of that is bad. We just need to find the treasure in all that, right? So as long as we keep doing bypassing and denying and rejecting and repressing, the dragon becomes bigger, becomes more fiery, the tunnel becomes darker. Now everything becomes more desperate, and we are drowning more and more. So it all begins with acceptance, no? And our acceptance of what's going on happens in the bigger acceptance that we are already accepted. No? So when you can accept that you are accepted, then you have the strength to accept so many things. And many times when we do not have the capacity to accept many of the things that come to our door, it's because we lose sight of how accepted we are. How accepted we are, especially when we are in those situations that we are struggling to accept. So it's important to create that correlation. Try to create that correlation in your own mind. And I'm saying that to me. I'm not saying that to you. I'm saying that to Swami Padmanabha. I have to walk this talk seriously. So whenever something is difficult to accept and whenever we are in denial, we have to invoke a bigger acceptance. Our acceptance is not enough. We are not capable of accepting what's happening. Then invoke a bigger acceptance, Krishna's acceptance of you. And by invoking a more powerful, broader, deeper, bigger acceptance, probably that will put you in context and allow you to accept what is up to you to accept in the context of being accepted. So in that context, we can confront what needs to be confronted. We can look at the face of spiritual bypassing and try to establish some dialogue with it, to have ongoing conversation. And it's not easy, but as we always say, it's not impossible either. It's just difficult, which is the middle path, the middle point. And we always want to tread the middle path. So anyhow, some thoughts, Rasangi. I hope that helps.
He says in the book that by creating intimacy with these things, we take out the fangs, the stick, the things that are so painful. And I just want to say that the saying comes to me, in like a needle, out like a plow. That's what this feels like. You know, you've come
Like
in
what?
like in like a needle and out like a plow.
Okay,
Because
yeah.
coming in is concepts, and this is the way to, you know, it will become more pure, more spiritual, more able to connect with reality, the beautiful. But it's like a plow. It's so painful. It can be excruciating. I'm finding some of this excruciating.
But again, the question is, it's so painful, but we have to have the, how to say, we have to have the integrity to ask why it's painful. No, it's painful intrinsically, or it's painful to me, because there are many things that are painful to us. They are not painful universally to every living being. So we have to have that level of integrity whenever something is painful. I'm not saying chastise yourself of feeling the pain, but just we have to be careful not to project the pain outside of us and ascribe the pain to whatever is happening to us. Whatever is coming is in itself made of pain, or is coming to make me suffer. We ascribe this subtle or not so subtle things. So many times, yeah, it's so painful. I'm not denying that, and we have to be empathic with that pain. We have to allow ourselves to go through. I'm not criticizing any of that, nor promoting denial of that, nor stigmatizing those who are going through. I'm not saying any of that, but we should leave some little window open to, but is it painful to me, or is it intrinsically painful? If it's painful to me, why? Is there a way that this situation that is painful to me can be no longer painful to me? Is there a way that I can relate to this in a non-painful way, and what it takes for that to happen, and not only establish this type of ongoing conversation, because if not, we quickly label all the things. Okay, painful, undesirable, bad, this shouldn't be happening. I want to get rid of this as soon as possible. No? Instead of taking responsibility, say, okay, I'm processing this experience in this way. What it makes it that way? Maybe this situation is just triggering some unprocessed pain that I already carried from before. Many times, I mean, we are carrying many unresolved issues, lots of pain, and sometimes certain situations just trigger what I have not resolved yet. But if we are not too aware of what would have not resolved, we will ascribe our trigger to the outer situation. Oh, this is so painful. I'm not saying you are doing that, but I'm just saying that can happen. This is so painful. Actually, that's just triggering a pain that unrecognized pain that I have not addressed and resolved. So anyhow, so many things can happen. and we should be open. We should be open to dialogue and acknowledging all the things.
One more thing that makes it, what makes it tolerable, in my understanding, is like-minded and open-hearted souls on the path. Proper sadhu sangha, Maharaj.
Yep.
Because
Yep.
I'm telling you, to do this alone can drive one mad. I see it in my work. If you don't have the support and the support and the love around you,
totally.
It can make you insane.
Yeah. And part of the support is as simple as sharing with someone who will tell you, oh, I also know what you're talking about. I've gone through that. Just getting to that point, like, oh, it's not only me going through this crazy stuff. No, we are all crazy like you. Welcome to the madhouse. Yeah, basically. We are all mad on some level or another. Eventually, the idea is to become mad for Krishna. I mean, free will is just pick your own madness, right? Free will means choosing which direction you want to go crazy. But yeah, big part of the support of sadhu sangha and proper sharing is just as simple as basic as that sound, to allow for that space of having our own story acknowledged by others and realizing that we are not alone in that particular Trinavarta, whirlwind, tornado, whatever we may be going through, or even our joys, no? Because it's similar to your joy. Imagine you feel some happiness or some joy, and you will go to the whole world and everyone will say, what are you talking about? That's so strange what you are feeling. I don't know what you are talking about. nobody of us know what's that happiness, joy. You will go mad at the same in another way, because it's like, am I the only one feeling this in the whole planet? I feel so beautiful, but nobody's like confirming that back to me. I'm going crazy. So in one sense, it's equally problematic, whether it's joy or or sadness. So that's so important that we can share both of those things and have them mirror back in a proper way, you know? So yeah. Thanks for sharing. We have a few more hands raised and we have some time, so let's continue with the navigation process. Next one is Lakshmi Priya from Austria, from Argentina, from Austria. I cannot listen to you, Lakshmi Priya.
Now you hear me?
Yes.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, Hare Krishna everybody. But I think somebody was before me.
I mean, I'm following I'm honoring the etiquette of Zoom on your hand first. So no
okay.
problem. We will go to all the hands, so it's okay.
Okay, thank you, Maharaj. I wanted to ask you what generally we always speak about the standard that we follow and this and that. So today I have visited a friend that was or is already a very long time in Krishna consciousness. And since it is Govardhan Puja and she's a little bit like away from the group, or I don't know, from the whole thing, we were asking ourselves like, how should we worship Giriraj today, since we are fortunate enough to have Giriraj at home. And we were comparing like how we were doing it before when we were very active in the temple and everything, with all these standards, all these rules, all this fasting and everything. And then we were talking about like Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, if you just offer me like a leaf or a fruit or whatever with love and devotion, then I will accept it. But at the same time, if like we were talking about Hari Bhakti Vilas and all these things, there are so many instructions. And when I asked back then my spiritual master why we have all these regulations, the answer was like, well, we need to purify the mind. But I'm kind of discovering that sometimes by trying to do that, we get lost in that way, or like the heart becomes quite cold or like of stone or something. So I was wondering, how can we understand standard, or what does it really mean, or how can we actually worship Krishna without going crazy, or yeah. So that would be my question.
Yeah, thank you. How to worship Krishna without going mad. Okay, that's a good way to craft it. Well, of course, few things. Immediate things that comes to me. I will take here advantage that we have Manjwali with us here. What did Srila Siddhar Maharaj tell you, Manjwali, about Giriraj? If you can share with us. Okay. When you ask him how to worship Giriraj.
Yes, I asked Srila Siddhar Maharaj, and he said simply. And he named by Giriraj Vrajaballabha, he said simple, keep it simple, it's heart worship. And Srila Prabhupada told me that as well. He said the more you dress Krishna, the more you dress your heart with Krishna consciousness. So it's heart worship for Giriraj. It's not, yes. And both Srila Prabhupada and Srila Siddhar Maharaj told me that. Okay? Okay, thank you. Of course, we may hear from different devotees different things and different standards. I'm just referring to my immediate points of reference, and especially in connection to Giriraj, I will say is Giriraj. I mean, it's characterized by that, like when Mahaprabhu gave Giriraj to Raghunath Das Goswami, and of course, someone might say, okay, we are not Raghunath Das Goswami, but at the same time, some standard was set there. But which was the standard? No, Mahaprabhu told him, okay, offer him tulsi, leaves, tulsi manjaris,
some water, basically that, raise. And of course, your heart, no? Which in one sense, it's not so easy to do that, but at the same time, it's what we want to do. It's what we are supposed to be doing. It's the idea of the whole thing. So for me, it's, when we speak about standards, for me, the word standard can trigger so much trauma, so much perfectionism, so much ego stuff, like doing things perfectly, not failing, because if I fail, this will happen, and then I become afraid, and I become neurotic, and apparat comes, and we weaponize apparat, and again, we go crazy in the name of worshiping Krishna. So we have to understand rules, regulations, all that has to be understood. The purpose of all rules and regulations is to create a good heart space to give ourselves to our beloved, to put it simply. If the rule and regulation is not facilitating that sacred place, sacred situation, sacred state of mind, there's not fulfilling its purpose. And no matter how many rules and regulations I follow, and I become proud of doing all this, probably, as you say, your heart is becoming harder. You are becoming more, I don't know, developing some superiority complex. I know the devotees who think the more rules and regulations you follow, the more advanced you are. And it's like, no way. That's not happening. Rupa Goswami says, niyama graha. Niyama graha means follow rules and regulations without understanding the purpose of the rules and regulations. And the rules and regulations are all to awaken love for Krishna. Again, Krishna in the Gita says, manmana, no? Manmana bhava, no? Give me your mind. Give me your mind means give me your heart. And then he says in chapter 12, if you cannot do this, then you do this. If you cannot do this, you do this. But like the first thing he says, always think about me. And always think about me, of course, is not a mechanical process. Okay, I will always think about Krishna. You cannot always think about Krishna unless you fall in love with Krishna. You cannot force yourself to always think about Krishna. It's not happening. Even if you wake up today and say, today I will always think about Krishna. After 10 seconds, you are thinking about ice cream or something else. No, unless you fall in love with him, then you cannot not think. Like the gopis, as we know, this lila, when the gopis sit all together, like yogis in meditation, say, this Krishna is giving us such headache on a daily basis, such a mischievous playboy guy. Let's make a concerted effort to stop thinking about Krishna for a moment. Imagine their challenge. That's our challenge is let's try to think about Krishna for a moment. And we sometimes fail miserably. But the gopis are like, let's try to stop thinking about Krishna for a moment. And they sit like yogis and try to concentrate their minds and forget. And after 10 seconds, 15 seconds, they open their eyes, they look at each other like, so did it happen? Did it happen? And everyone's like, it's not possible. We have fallen in love with him. So you cannot not think about him. So my point is, all these rules and regulations are to promote falling in love with God. So you have to pay attention to how much that's actually happening. Because if it's not happening, if you don't feel it's happening, it doesn't make much sense just to push nonetheless with the rules and regulations. And I have to add more rules and regulations because it's not happening. I'm following 3,000 rules and regulations. Love is not coming. Maybe I'm supposed to follow 5,000 rules and regulations. No, please be careful. The more we advance, the more our worship will become simplified. Again, Raghunath Das Goswami is the Prayojan Tattvacharya. He's showing the ultimate goal of life, and it's so simple. Out externally so simple, internally so elaborate. No? So sometimes externally is very elaborate, all rules, regulations, but internally there's not much going on. But the more something is going on internally, in one sense, the more it will simplify externally, because so much is going on internally that you don't have much time for external elaboration. So that's how we hear great devotees, their external worship is so simple. It's not that they are trying to keep it as simple as possible out of laziness. It's that so many elaborate arrangements are going on inside their hearts. Externally, they're offering a tulsi leaf, they're offering a glass of water, but they're offering their whole heart through that. No, we have been talking about that yesterday with Manjwali. I'm giving just a trailer here. We have recorded some podcasts with her, and we were talking about also Saint Therese of Lisieux, this Christian saint, that she has her little way. I don't know if you have heard about her anyway. She says her little way means to do very little things with lots of heart. No, to do the smallest things, but with the biggest possible investment of my heart. So she will call herself like a little flower. So a little flower, and it's a very beautiful exercise. No, like let's say, I don't know, you have to wash a pot for Bhagavan. No, I had to do that a lot in my first days in the ashram. Pot washer. I love that. That was ecstasy for me. So try to wash one pot as elaborate as you can internally. Try to offer yourself as much as you can through that one single pot. But try to make a conscious effort for that. And then you'll see the result of that. You don't need to be opening a $40 million temple, or to be the top book distributor on the planet, or to be an acharya with 3 million disciples. You can just be picking a flower for Giriraja, and very simply, externally, but internally, so elaborate, so elaborate. So I will say that. And for me, the main verse in this connection that comes to mind over and over again is regarding rules, regulations, standards. Smartavya satatam vishnor vismartavya najatu chit sarve viddhini sedasur etayoreva kinkara. Verse from the Puranas, which says, always think about Krishna, never forget Krishna, which again means fall in love with Krishna. All the rule, sarve viddhini sedasur, all the regulations, all the prescriptions, all the rules of the scripture, etayoreva kinkara, are servants, kinkara, of this principle. So the verse says, fall in love with Krishna, all the rules you find are in service to that idea. So so you have to deal with standards and rules in a way that is facilitating the melting of your heart. Let's put it that way. That's it. Amphalena farishete. No, you judge the tree by its fruit. You have to pay attention. Is this happening? Am I dealing with rules, regulation, and standards in a way that it's melting, or it's in a way that is hardening? No, we have to have, like, how to say, vigilance, daily vigilance. What's going on inside? And we may need sometimes to talk with guidance, with mentors, to adjust things if it's not working. Sometimes we may need to break some rules to keep the higher rule in place. And there are so many examples in the scripture for that. In order to keep the highest rule, which is melting the heart, loving Krishna, worshiping from the rest, we may need to transgress some inferior rules that are getting in the way of that. Only when they get in the way, again, I'm not promoting here just sheer anarchy. I'm just saying we have to apply discernment. It's not just about following formulas without understanding why. Again, that's niyamagraha. Rupa Goswami said, that's sadbir bhakti vinashati. That will destroy your bhakti. That's what he's saying. He's using that word, vinas. No? Nrsimhadev bhakti vigna vignasana. He's a destroyer of obstacles. Here, Rupa Goswami said, no, this is an obstacle that will destroy your bhakti. No, follow rules, standard regulations in a way that is not melting your heart. Bas. Period. Now we have to deal with that in practice. So, and there will be so many opinions and so many things being said and so many standards, but the ultimate standard is love, basically. That's the ultimate rule. Love rules. No, so that's the ultimate standard. We may not have love, we may not be in Prem Bhakti, and therefore there are rules that will help us again to create a sacred environment. No, that's the idea. Like when you enter into space of like sacred ritual in certain traditions, and you see that there are rules how to start the ritual, and but it all has the purpose of creating a certain experience of sacredness, for example. No, so okay, let's enter into this sacred space. Like, I don't know, we did in our UK radical personalism retreat some circle sharing. So let's do it in this way, and these are the rules for the sharing, but the rules are meant to facilitate the experience. The rules are not meant to obfuscate or like to get in the way of the experience. So there is a place for rules. We are not condemning that. There is a place for standards as long as they invoke sacred space, sacred experience. So, and if that's not happening, it's not that we may need to reject the rule, but we may need to rediscover how to apply the rule so it fulfills its purpose, right? So that's for me the commonsensical way of dealing with all this, because if not, we just become robots, basically cyborgs, and we can just follow. But I've seen a lot through the last 25 years in those terms, starting with myself, and yeah, it doesn't get anywhere. It creates a very obfuscated and disjointed version of Bhakti. Yeah, I hope that helps. I don't know. Yes.
Yes, Maharaj, thank you. Because it had to do with that, like we were feeling somehow like we were comparing how we were doing things before and how are we doing things now, like more according to our mood or to our feelings. But there is also some sense of guilt for not doing things as we used to do before. Yeah, so that's why I wanted to ask, but it was very clear. Thank you, Maharaj.
Yeah, and we have to be willing and able to sometimes let go of certain fear or nostalgia of how we did things in the past and how we need to do them now. Because sometimes we may need to change some things, whether it's for more simplicity, depending each case, but sometimes it's important to let go with gratitude the past, not with resentfulness, not with nostalgia, not with guilt, but with gratitude, but yeah, move forward. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Maharaj.
Okay, we go to our two friends from New Zealand, from Vrindavan over there, raising their hands. So happy to have you there. Finally, we got to find a time zone in which we can align each other. So Balaram, you have a question, or Hunter Darshan?
Pranams, Maharaj, can you hear me?
Yeah, but you turn off your camera right now when you're asking your question. That doesn't work like that.
Oh,
That's
how
not,
do I?
That's not the standard. We have certain rules here, right? Now I cannot listen to you. I can see you, but I cannot listen to you.
Okay. Sorry, I'm not
It's
used to
okay.
doing this on my phone.
Yeah, it's okay. Sorry, I'm joking.
So nice to see you in person, and it's nice to be part of this group since I'm always listening like a day or so late. But
Yes.
yeah, it's great to be here. I did have a quick question, but I was also just wanted to appreciate what you were saying about this verse, Dharma. Dharma Projita Kaitavo. Citing the morning where I'm staying.
You became a little frozen. Sorry,
Thank you for that.
Balaram. But yeah, okay. I get the appreciation for that.
But my question was about we had a nice. Oh, I'm sorry. Wi-Fi is not.
Maybe turn off the video. Maybe that helps a little bit for having better connection there.
Okay, let's try that. So my question is basically after we had a nice festival today, and there were quite a few devotees there coming from different groups, and I was thinking about, like, I was getting a bit sentimental, and I was thinking, why can't we have, I guess, better interaction between the different sanghas? And I'm wondering if you could just share some brief thoughts on what you feel is the kind of the main obstacles that are, creating disharmony between different groups, and perhaps what we can do as individuals to improve that situation, if you don't mind speaking a little on that.
Yeah,
Based
thank you.
on your own experience.
Yeah, thank you. So, of course, I will say there are different levels of differences between groups. You know, sometimes there may be like, how to say, gentle discrepancies in which we have a clear difference, and that doesn't prevent us from having a conversation or meeting or sharing, but at the same time, the difference we may have is big enough as to not being able to go to the fullest depth. To give an example, for example, just speaking in our Gaudiya Vaishnava scenario, no? Because of course we can go to other traditions and religions, and of course even going to other traditions and religions, one main obstacle in that sense is whenever someone feels, okay, my group is true, bona fide, and yours is not. No? Like mine is going to heaven, sorry, and yours is not, sorry. So that in itself like prevents a certain level of depth in the conversation. We can talk and we can share, but when it comes to, yeah, but this is the real thing, yours is not, it's like, no. So that can happen among different traditions or religions, but also that can happen among Gaudiya Vaishnava groups. And I've talked about that a few times, but sometimes, especially in that connection, what I will say is there is, and I've been talking, I think, if I'm not mistaken, with Namrasa Prabhu in the last podcast we recorded that he will share next month. And we were talking about, because I'm someone who personally likes to bridge gaps. And I like, as you know, I like to engage in conversation. I like to talk with people from different places and groups and trying to bridge gaps, to create bridges and to create avenues for exchange, even though I understand we will have differences, but that doesn't mean that we cannot appreciate and talk with each other and share as deep as we can. So we were talking, yeah, in our Gaudiya Vaishnava traditions, one of the main bridges that we need to build, let's put it that way, it will be a bridge in which nowadays, in general, I'm not saying 100% everyone, but still there is a big division between what is the line coming from Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Bhaktisiddhanta, and so on, and what is generally called traditional paribars. There is a big gap still there. And part of the big gap, and I'm not saying this is unidirectional, it may happen in both directions, but part of the gap is because, to give an example, many members from the traditional paribars consider the line of coming from Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur as not bona fide. So that naturally creates a, no, if you are from that line and someone tells you respectfully, but you know what, sorry, but I don't think your line is bona fide, of course that prevents from some further conversation. Now, of course, the conversation is, okay, why you consider that? And is there something I mean, it's not that we have to try to convince each other how bona fide is my line, but I think there should be openness for that. And of course, from the other side, sometimes the same thing is being said. No, some members from the Bhaktivinoda Paribar may say, oh, those who are not from our line are all whatever, sahajas or all this and that. And again, many times that comes from a very immature, fanatic, generic abstraction of putting everyone in the same bag instead of dealing with people, no? Instead of knowing the person and ascertaining the person's situation. No, you are in that group, that means you cannot make it, or you are not bona fide, or you are this, or you are that. So I think that will be one of the main, how to say, bridges to construct and distances to, and that may take time. I don't know if that will ever happen. And to be honest, I hope so. That's my hope. I'm trying my best as much as I can. But also, of course, how to say, if someone is convinced of something, one cannot just push too much. No, I mean, I've talked with some devotees who told me, yeah, I don't think your line is bona fide, basically. And they told me that respectfully and sincerely, but They told me that. So I honor their sincerity, but I have a huge disagreement with that. But also I can see that that person has their conviction. So I'm not trying also to enter into a debate and to defeat the other person or to convince the other person. It's just, okay. I mean, if there's openness for dialogue, that's beautiful. So I think that's a big one. Because again, as long as we think you are not bona fide or vice versa, we can talk only till certain direction, right? So I'm talking in general, of course. Then we have specifics in different groups, and when I say specifics in different groups, I don't saying all the groups think the same way, but members in one group will. These are things more not about the group, but it's about adhikar, right? Levels of maturity, levels of perception, and you find that everywhere. No, people getting triggered or threatened by whatever is different, trying to. I mean, I've gone myself through that recently a little bit. No, some devotees kind of preventing others from hearing from me, and it's fine. Life happens, but I think it's, and in part sometimes that's related with past experiences, where unfortunately sometimes also some devotees have been quite invasive in their sharing without honoring the other people's faith, and that somehow has created some defensiveness in certain groups. No, like whoever is coming outside from our ranks, we have to be on guard, because you don't know what may happen. And again, you have some triggered trauma from the past getting in the way there. So I can understand that happened, that created some reaction, but also we have to be open to a new chapter of the story. and because sometimes we can also go like, your Guru Maharaj say this about my Guru Maharaj, or the Guru Maharaj of your Guru Maharaj of your Guru Maharaj say that about the Guru Maharaj of the Guru Maharaj of my Guru Maharaj 3 centuries ago. And because of that, I hate you, so to say. No, I'm kind of making a little bit dramatic, but sometimes we get stuck in what happened 3 generations. And yeah, probably the Guru Maharaj for Guru Maharaj for Guru Maharaj have that problem, but that doesn't mean that we have to keep fighting with one another because of my grandparents' issues. Let's solve what our grandparents were not able to solve for whatever reason. That doesn't mean that we are better than them. It's just, it's the duty of our generation, something like that. So, okay, which are the unresolved issues that still linger from previous experiences, from previous generations? How we as the current generation can bring those to the table and renew the conversation, not keep it out of date with the same arguments and the same things and the same accusations and the same concepts that were brought 300 years ago, because that's what makes the whole thing irrelevant. People from outside the tradition look at that and it's like, oh my gosh, no, how can you fight with one another in that nasty way? No, I mean, you are all supposed to be branches of the same tree. As I like to say, you never see the branches of the tree fighting with one another. They are all part of a whole. They are collaborating for the greatest interest. So we are all part of Mahaprabhu's tree. One line, another line, it's all different branches with the same root. So we are supposed to get along properly. That's not the case sometimes. So, okay, let's work. And that's part of the duty we are invited to contribute to. How to have more meaningful conversation, how to bridge gaps, how to love each other despite differences. It's not that we have to agree on everything. We can have even doctrinal differences, standard differences, sometimes philosophical differences. And we have to still learn to love and appreciate it, at least to have a conversation about how different we are. But let's have a conversation. So many times there is an unwillingness to even engage in dialogue because we have already concluded and made enough assumptions to put the other person in a very tight box. So there is no way for changing that scenario. And that's tragic, literally, that's tragic. Not only for how we are being seen by outsiders, quote unquote, but also by what message we are giving to ourselves and to the members of our own tradition. No, this is how we are supposed to relate to one another. This is how we are supposed to grow in dialogue together. This is how we are supposed to find cohesiveness and unity in diversity. This is how we are supposed to remind each other that we all belong to the same family. Not even Gaudiya Parivar, Gauda Parivar, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. The whole of reality is one single family. Everything has the same root. So if I do not learn to apply that with my own family, so to say, how can I see the whole of reality and existence as one family? So we have to begin at home, basically, because, and I remember we talked about that with Krishna Kshetra Maharaj in the podcast we did. Sometimes we can organize even interfaith dialogues and get along nicely with other religions, but we cannot talk with each other in Gaudiya Vaishnavism, in the Gaudiya Sampradaya. So it's another form of spiritual bypassing. No? Let's be kind and nice with Christians and Muslims and Jews, but when a Gaudiya Vaishnava from another group comes, I cross the street. I look in another direction. But when Christian comes, oh, let's have harmony and interface and diversity. No, you're using that escapism. First, get along at home. No, again, it's like if you don't speak with your wife and children, and you go outside your house and you're so friendly and loving with everyone, and you go back home and you're like a ghost or something. So yeah, we need still to mature a lot. And as I mentioned in Radical Personalism, Gaudiya Sampradaya in its own ways, in its Kumar Lila, in its first blossom, it's a young school comparatively. If you take geological time, we have been living just for a few nanoseconds. So still we have a lot to learn, a lot to grow as a community. We have lots to learn from other communities which have been here for longer than us. So we have to be humble, acknowledge our shortcomings, learn, take advantage from whatever we can, and yeah, begin in some realistic way with whatever we can begin here and now, and gradually. Not we won't make it an absolute systemic change from day to night, but we can begin with something, whatever we see, we find that needs to be addressed, that can be addressed, that I want to address. Okay, then try it. But first acknowledge that needs to be addressed. I want to address it and I can do it, and then try it. If you fail miserably, maybe you put the bar a little low, try it again. and then that's how you start changing the world, basically. So some thoughts. I don't want to overextend myself, but we can, yeah, it's a long conversation, of course, but it's good that we keep the conversation going. So thank you for bringing that to the table. And we'll conclude here with the presentation, but don't leave the room yet, because as usual, for those who are already connected for the more than the first time, and for those for the first time, we used to have some Zoom breakout rooms where we invite each other to share for a few minutes, one-on-one, what has touched you especially today, share some insights, and create a little bit more significant bonds between one another. So we will conclude here, and Bhakti Rasa will activate the breakout rooms for those who would like to join. Shri Giriraja Maharaj ki jai, Govardhan Puja ki jai, Sachinandan Gaur Hari ki jai, Harinam Prabhu ki jai, Shri Gaur Nityananda Gaur Gadadhar Ju ki jai, Shri Radha Madan Mohan Radha Govinda Dev Radha Gopinath Ju ki jai, Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki